Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's second video, doing the European outlook for today's second video. So as always on a Thursday, we have a look at the weather for the next week, 10 days in detail for Northern Europe, and I shall get on with that for you in a moment. Just to say that the first video release today was our 6 AM upload. They've got 10 to 14 day of all our break features going to you later on this afternoon, followed by the 6th instalment of the Christmas countdown. So please like, share, subscribe on the video. Thank you so much everybody for doing that. I hope you're having a lovely Thursday. Right, so let's crack on with the European outlook. Now, I've got cold air into the far north of Europe at the moment, and the storyline through the coming week is going to be low pressure and milder air in the Atlantic battling against high pressure and colder air over Scandinavia and eastern northeastern parts of Europe. And this sets the scene very nicely. This is today's starting pressure chart. So we've got a deep area of low pressure sitting across the UK and Ireland, the Low Countries, and whatnot. Further north and east, you've got areas of high pressure over Scandinavia, and that's pulling cold air from Russia into the far east and northeast of Europe. If you have a look at the upper air temperatures, you can see that we've got minus 10 Celsius iceberg into the extreme eastern part of Europe, minus 5 Celsius iceberg further westwards. Meanwhile, further southwest of that, though, the upper air temperatures are relatively mild, particularly so through the Mediterranean, where they remain relatively warm. So precipitation-wise, lots of dry weather up over Scandinavia and northeastern parts of Europe, though we will have some snow showers in some of these Baltic states drifting in from the east. And there's an area of rain, sleet and snow here through Ukraine, heading down in towards the Black Sea as well. Further westwards, lots of wet weather around the UK and into the Low Countries, parts of Germany, and also stretching up into Denmark as well. More showers through France, Spain and Portugal, while the rest of the Mediterranean is relatively dry. There are a few showers scattered about, but a lot of dry weather from the central part of the bed eastwards towards the eastern portion of the Mediterranean. And temperatures are looking like that today, so it is very cold across Scandinavia, sub-zero in central northern regions as well, and through Finland into these Baltic Sea states. Again, we see cold air there, and into western Russia, also looking very cold, back drifting out into some parts of eastern Poland, in towards the Ukraine as well. So it really is, really quite cold now across those northern and northeastern parts of Europe. But the south is relatively mild through the Mediterranean. As we come northwards into the UK, Ireland, the Low Countries, Germany, technically the upper air temperatures are mild, but actually it's about average really with the surface temperatures and cooler than it has been at earlier times through this autumn. France looks relatively warm, as does Spain and Portugal. Right, so on into tomorrow, Friday, the Scandinavian high continues to sit there. We pull colder air from Russia into these eastern and northeastern parts of Europe. Plenty of low pressure further south and west as the milder air engages with that cold air. It generates low pressure, so there's a lot of low pressure across much of central, southern and also western parts of Europe as well tomorrow. Rare temperatures look bitterly cold here around these Baltic Sea countries, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. It looks very cold through those areas and stretching back in towards the border of Russia, northern parts of Ukraine, and into Poland as well. Bitterly cold air pushing through there. Scandinavia, central northern parts of Scandinavia, the upper air temperatures are technically mild, but of course it will be much colder on the surface as that area of high pressure, and southern parts of Scandinavia looking relatively mild. And then further southwards we find plenty of wet weather, plenty of mild weather, I should say, through the Mediterranean, especially the eastern part of the Med. Western parts of Europe looking a little bit cooler through there. Precipitation-wise, again, lots of dry weather where it's coldest up in the north and northeast, but any precipitation that does fall will be falling as snow. Of course, there will be some snow showers around these Baltic Sea states. Further south, we've got rain, sleet and snow here across some of these eastern parts of Europe. Wet weather out in the west, and some heavy showers are first of all beginning to get going around some parts of Spain and pushing in towards the Mediterranean as well. Further showers over on the eastern side of the Med too. The temperatures tomorrow look bitterly cold across much of northern and northeastern Europe. That cold air is drifting further westwards as well through Poland, some of it beginning to get into eastern parts of Germany even. Relatively mild further west and south of that, particularly so in the southeastern corner actually from the Balkans down to the Black Sea and southwards in towards Greece and Turkey. Up the sub-temperature looking relatively mild there. Into Saturday, the battle continues. The next area of low pressure will be moving in off the Atlantic in towards western Europe. Meanwhile, high pressure over Scandinavia keeps that cold easterly wind going across the far northeast Europe. Upper air temperatures looking cold across much of northern Europe, and that puddle of bitterly cold air with minus 10 Celsius ice motion that's drifting a little bit further westwards towards the Baltic Sea. Cool through UK, Ireland and France in towards the Low Countries. Cold air is actually getting into Germany and into the North Sea, so the UK is also very close to some properly cold air there on Saturday. Further south was relatively mild through the Mediterranean, especially the eastern portion of the Mediterranean once again. Turning really wet through the Balkans, around the Adriatic into Italy. Heavy rain and thunderstorms, could be hail and mountain snow. Of course, further showers in towards the northern shores of North Africa and the Mediterranean as well. And over towards parts of Greece, there could be some heavy showers, thunderstorms kicking off through there. Another band of wet and windy weather moving into Ireland and northern parts of Spain and Portugal. That will be heading in towards the UK later on Saturday as well. Meanwhile, further northwards, again, quite a lot of dry weather through the northern part of Europe, but it will be very cold, and this precipitation here, for example, through the Baltic Sea, heading in towards parts of Sweden, that will be primarily snow. I'm so sorry, that'll be primarily snow moving in from off the Baltic Sea, and more snow coming out of Russia, heading in towards these northeastern states of Europe as well. Very, very cold across northern and eastern parts of Europe. Sub-zero day and night through these northern and eastern parts of Europe. That cold air drifting further westwards into Germany and even getting into northern parts of the Low Countries and Denmark as well. To the west of that, temperature will be near normal, a little bit on the cool side, but a little bit closer to average through Ireland, UK, France, Spain and Portugal once again. And once more, it's relatively mild in this eastern part of the Mediterranean, especially around Greece and Turkey, quite warm through there. Sunday, we've got low pressure across the western Europe. Again, it's battling with this high pressure over Scandinavia and northeastern parts of Europe. The coldest of the air on Sunday will actually be over Scandinavia now and flirting with northern and eastern parts of Scotland. Pretty cool through most other parts of Europe, and then we come further south as it's relatively mild through the Mediterranean, especially from Black Sea down towards Greece and Turkey. The upper air temperature quite warm there, but there will be heavy showers and thunderstorms through this southeastern part of Europe and into the eastern portion of the Mediterranean. Meanwhile, outbreaks of rain in the west through France, UK, Ireland, and as that pushes eastwards into the cold air, that will turn probably increasingly into snow through particularly northern parts of Germany and in towards Scandinavia as well. And the temperatures on Sunday, they're looking bitterly cold for much of northern, eastern, northeastern Europe. Again, sub-zero by day and by night. And relatively mild in the southern part of the Mediterranean, especially in the southeastern corner. Temperatures not too far from average, probably a bit on the cool side through the UK, through Ireland, and through parts of France and the Low Countries as well. Some of that wet weather could turn to snow over Scotland on Saturday night and into Sunday. And then low pressure is still in control of weather for the western part of Europe as we move through into Monday. The next low comes in off the Atlantic, will bring further wet weather there. Meanwhile, blocking goes on in the far north and northeast Europe, and we are generating more low pressure over here on the eastern side of Europe as well. The upper air temperatures are looking cold through Scandinavia and northern parts of Europe. A little bit less cold out in the west with this area of low pressure in its warm sector before cool air comes back in behind it. The warmest upper air temperatures will again be across southern parts of Europe and in this eastern, southeastern corner. And precipitation wise, we look like that. So yet more wet and windy weather pushing across the country on Monday, pushing across the UK, I should say, and Ireland into France, Spain, Portugal as well. So a big band of wet weather across the west of Europe, sweeping eastwards. Further eastwards, we've got snow across Scandinavia, so Denmark, up into southern parts of Sweden, and also into Norway. There will be further snow through there. It just remains very cold, I think, through the far east, northeast Europe, but further snow around Russia and coming in some of these eastern portions of Europe. Heavy showers and thunderstorms continue for many of the Greek islands. Temperatures, they look really cold across Scandinavia in particular, bitterly cold in the far north Scandinavia. Winter really bedding in through there. And eastern portions of Europe are looking really quite cold as well, although we do get a push of warmer air up the Black Sea and into southern and southeastern parts of the Ukraine. Further southwards, there's going to be relatively mild air through much of the Mediterranean, and then just generally quite cool, I suppose, through France, UK, Ireland, Low Countries, and into Germany. The coldest of the air probably to the east of Germany, through Poland and north and east of that. Heading on into Tuesday, the high pressure tries to continue over the far north of Europe, but low pressure is deepening actually in the Atlantic. The Atlantic showing signs of becoming rather vigorous with more areas of low pressure sweeping in from west. We've got an area of low over Italy and the Adriatic as well on Tuesday. So the corridors of red temperatures again are in the north of Europe through Scandinavia. Further southwards, the upper air temperature probably closer to average, relatively mild for the southern parts of Europe, but it's very unsettled on Tuesday. There'll be heavy showers and thunderstorms with longer spells of rain through Italy, over the Adriatic into the Balkans. Could be hill and mountain snow, of course, through there. And then going southwards in towards Greece as well. We see some of those big showers and thunderstorms. Meanwhile, further west, we've got heavy rain coming into the western side of Europe again. So there'll be more wet weather through like northern Spain, Portugal, France, UK, Ireland. Expect further outbreaks of persistent and heavy rain at times, and then mixed precipitation here in the northeast of Europe around the Baltic Sea states, of course, with the cold air that is going to be mostly falling as snow, and some of that will push through the Baltic Sea in towards parts of Scandinavia as well. The temperatures are looking really cold again, sub-zero through many parts of Scandinavia and also into the far northeastern portion of Europe around the Baltic Sea states once more. And pretty cool temperatures actually through most parts of Europe, even down into the Mediterranean. I think by Tuesday those temperatures are looking a little bit on the low side. And then we move on into Wednesday, and yes, you guessed it, low pressure is still dominating in the Atlantic into the western part of Europe, and maybe the high pressure beginning to ease across northern Europe a little bit. Although the upper air temperatures still continue to be quite cold across northern Europe, but west and south and southwest of Europe having relatively mild upper air temperatures on Wednesday. There will be further heavy showers and longer spells of rain through much of western Europe, so a bit of an Atlantic onslaught in the next week with several bouts of rain to come through the UK, through Ireland, through France, Spain and Portugal, also into the Low Countries and into Germany as well, probably up into Denmark and some parts of Norway and Sweden where the rain will more likely turn to sleet. So, and then further northeastwards about, we've got some snow from Russia pushing through Finland into towards parts of eastern Sweden as well. Going southwards, we'll have more showers and thunderstorms here in this eastern, southeastern part of the Mediterranean, and actually looking rather unsettled through many parts of the Med on Wednesday. Bitterly cold air continues to sit over Scandinavia, and the east and northeast Europe looks very cold as well. The mildest temperatures will be out in the west with those west-southwest winds and areas of low pressure, and also in the eastern part of the Mediterranean. Moving through to Thursday, low pressure is dominating out in the Atlantic and moving into the western side of Europe once again. And that's going to bring a push of milder air from the south and southwest probably through the last stages of next week. So western Europe turns milder, meanwhile the far north and northeast Europe continues to look quite cold. Further heavy rain in the west of Europe with that milder air coming in off the Atlantic. Torrential rain through parts of Portugal and Spain. Also a heavy rain through France into the UK and Ireland once again. Go northeast was that. The rain will turn to snow with the cold air over much of Scandinavia and also in the east and the northeast of Europe. Some of that snow could be quite heavy in places. And further thunderstorms, this time from Greece in towards Turkey, while the central part of the Med begins to turn a little bit drier through Italy as well. And the temperatures look like that. Relatively mild air coming up the western side of Europe with that wet and windy weather, but you notice the cold air continues to sit there over Scandinavia and into the east and the northeast of Europe as well, while the Mediterranean looks relatively mild. I'll just run you on today, Ken. So Friday next week, 25th November, that looks very unsettled for the western part of Europe. Milder air beginning to push further northwards though in towards parts of Scandinavia with those southerly winds. Perhaps, and then we move on into Saturday and Sunday, 26th, 27th of November, and the trend is possibly just towards higher pressure beginning to build here more generally across the north and west of Europe. That would start to settle things down. We begin to lose some of the heaviest of the rain, and we will probably start turning a little bit colder under that high pressure with an increase in risk perhaps of frost and fog, but of course that is a long way out. Right, so quite an interesting week, 10 days to come. There's going to be plenty of rain, and there is also going to be plenty of snow for those northern and northeastern parts of Europe as this battle goes on. If you enjoyed this European outlook, then please do like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. And we're going to be back shortly with 10 to 14 dayer. That will include all of our rig features. And then got the 6th installment of Christmas Countdown tonight. So keep checking back to the channel for more. This week's European outlook. That's all for now. And thanks for watching.